What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is a very special Only Sports podcast. I'm Will. That's Casino over there. We both look like very fancy investment bankers because it is season 2, episode 1 of the Only Sports podcast. We almost started this podcast a year ago today, but we're starting season 2 a little early. Casino looks very nice. I look like
What I wore at my wedding, so
my tux was rented, so I just have my vest. I don't have a jacket. Casino was wearing a jacket, but we decided to go vest so we could both look like investment bankers. I also don't wear long sleeves up to my wrist. I always curl it at my elbows, but Casino looking very dapper. This is maybe the first promise we've ever made on this
and
podcast
kept.
and kept. And I almost forgot it. I came to the podcast looking like a schlub, and then I saw Casino looking like $1 million, and I had to make a quick change of uniform outfit. But
Yes.
today we are starting our NFL preview. We are doing 2 teams a week until the season starts, previewing the whole division, talking about it as much as we can. Today we're going to do NFC South, but that does not mean that we're also not going to talk about topical sports events in the world of all sports, not just football. So before we dive into that, how you doing, Casino? You finally got a new computer.
I did, and there's a lot going on. I'm apparently it's already telling me though that my performance issues detected with the memory usage of some of your background tabs is high. Choose to either sleep or close some of all of your tabs. Basically, though, they have just like a billion things that are pre-loaded into this computer that we can
Yep.
probably get rid of the majority of them. So
Yeah.
yeah, no. Besides that, it's great. Everything's running fast and smooth, and it's pretty fun, actually. It's quite
How
nice.
does it feel to have a computer from this century that you're using?
Oh,
Oh,
they
wow. Look at
laughed
that
at me,
fancy mic or fancy mouse as well. Wow.
dude. They so when I went there because I got this at Costco, I noticed. I think as I talked on the previous season here, because we're on the new season. Uh, um,
Exactly.
yeah, that there was a marketed like down $150 for this laptop, and I was like, I'm gonna go and get that laptop, and I did, and I have 90 days to return it if it is not up to my standards. So
There you go. We're all living in 2023. Casinos over there living in 2013.
yeah,
But
but they
it's a
laughed at me
start.
when they asked what I had, and I was like, "Oh, Windows 7 from, like, 15 years ago." They go, "Anything that you get is gonna be better." And I said, "Okay."
Yeah. Literally anything. And then they just showed you a loaf of bread and they were like, this gets better internet than what you have now. But uh let's dive into the news, Casino. And you wanted to open the show talking about this baseball brawl. So break down the baseball brawl for us all. See what I did
That
there?
was fun to say. Yeah. So essentially, it comes down to, 2 players that happened the other day with, the Chicago White Sox, shortstop Tim Anderson versus the Guardians third baseman Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez is typically a very even-keeled, cool dude. I don't know much about Tim Anderson. So essentially what had happened was, he comes Jose comes sliding into second base, and Anderson like makes a hard tag on top of him. Um, he's basically like guarding the base, so Jose has to go underneath Anderson's legs, and Anderson makes a hard tag on top. Um, it gets up as soon as like he gets up, all of a sudden Tim Anderson and Jose start and Ramirez, they start like jawing back and forth, which is okay, whatever. We've seen this before. I thought maybe there would be like a pushback and then like that fake swinging and then the benches brawl, they all come out and hold each other and make love and all that thing. But no, Tim Anderson drops his glove. He squares up on second base, like full on boxing squares up. I thought I was watching the Nate Diaz Jake Paul fight. which and we could talk about that too if we wanted to. Was it Jake Paul or I don't know, one of the Paul brothers? I don't care. You probably know. Anyway, so he squares up, and Tim Anderson's bigger, much bigger than Jose Ramirez, and they start swinging, going at it, and Jose Ramirez does just an awesome straight up shot. Like his head's down, so he doesn't see him. But as long as you could take a good hit, uh, make a good contact, and he got Tim Anderson so hard it decked him, blocked him. He was knocked out, and it was absolutely wonderful. If you uh, listen to the call from the Guardians call, the announcer. It was absolutely great. He's like, "Down goes Anderson, down goes Anderson." So it was like the down goes Frazier thing, and it was a really good call. So if you have any time, you should look that up. I forget the guy's name that was running the call for it, but if you could listen to that, it is amazing and it was wonderful. It sounded like I was watching a boxing match. But yeah, it was great. So they both did get some suspensions though from this. There we go. Uh, so Tim Anderson, they were both suspended. But Tim Anderson, though, he got suspended 6 games. Jose Ramirez only got suspended out for 3. I like this. A lot of people are like, well, Jose is the one that actually made like super hard contact and knocked Anderson out to where there's another side clip of when everything's like said and done. Anderson is like trying to walk away and his team is helping him and his legs are gone. Like he stumbling, he can't stand up. They're almost like dragging him off the field. He got rocked so hard. I mean, this was the NFL. He'd be out concussion protocol done for at least a couple weeks. He would have 2 it up. But
I think the
Jose
most
Ramirez only got 3. But again, Anderson was the one that got the majority of it because he was the instigator. He was the one that dropped his glove and squared up with Jose Ramirez.
yeah.
And Jose was defending himself because Anderson starts going after him, and lo and behold, you mess with fire. I mean, yeah, Ramirez is shorter and smaller in every aspect, but he knocked his he knocked his ass out, dude. It was
Well,
great.
Well, I think the most impressive thing about this is when Ramirez throws the punch that knocks out Anderson, he's surrounded by 4 of Anderson's teammates and still gets the punch off. Like it's
Oh
like
yeah,
he's the one the other team is trying to restrain, but he still just sneaks one in there and then drops him, and then his Anderson's teammates like whisk him away. But he had 1 second, and man, uh he just laid him out. And also, it's Jake Paul is the boxer, Logan Paul is the wrestler. Both of them had fights Saturday night, one at SummerSlam, one against Nate Diaz. So both Paul
right. So
brothers.
Jake was the Nate Diaz fight, um,
Yes.
which I'm still waiting for Jake. I mean, he's now finally, in my eyes, he's established himself as a good boxer. He's a good boxer, but he needs to start facing actual boxers. Like when he fought the Fury fight, he lost. Like he needs to fight actual boxers, not just
Yeah.
MMA stars that are wrestlers. Because if it was a UFC fight, Nate Diaz would have probably killed him. And I don't mean just like, hey, knocked him out. He might have actually killed him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so both these players, Anderson and Ramirez, they're both going for appeals. Um, which I don't think Anderson has much of a case to stand on. I think Ramirez does because yes, he engaged with the fighting, but he was also doing self defense. You know, like
Yeah.
he
I
got
agree.
up. Yes, he was jawing at him, but he's also defending himself against a much bigger guy that was, you know, obviously aggravated with him and dropped his gloves. So, yeah, I think Ramirez can win his appeal. I don't think Anderson could. Do I think either of them win it? No, but if anybody had a chance, I think it would be Ramirez. But yeah, it was great. And then did you see like what Terry Francona said? About the severity of Ramirez's penalty. It's like he's going to appeal. My hope is that can lower it because he's such a good player. I thought it seemed to me that he was extremely um, conscientious in what they were doing, at least when I talked to them. So like I like that. I again Ramirez he did square up as well, but he was doing it out of self defense. 'Cause
Yeah.
Anderson was the one that was really starting the whole thing,
Well,
which
and I think I agree with what you said. Like to make the case of who's at fault, it's the guy who's clearly rips off his glove and is like, it's go time. Because you can even see up to that point, Ramirez is just like, we're just going to yell at each other. Our teams are going to separate and it's going to be done. The second he takes off the glove and squares up, you could see Ramirez being like, all right, it's fucking go time. Like, and then he just, yeah, just got the shot in. The shot.
right.
Uh,
But yeah, so that was that one. But he was also being a complete ass for he was being an ass to all Cleveland players. There was a point where he pulled off the infielder Brian Rocchio or something like that off the bag at second, leading him to being called out for making the Cleveland players agitated. Like so, he
yeah.
was getting under a lot of people's skin. So I'm glad that he got decked and got knocked out because he was trying to be a tough dude. So it made me happy. I love when somebody bigger than somebody else tries to pick on the small person. He's like, "Oh, this is my opportunity. Let's go for the weaker opponents, just in case something happens. I look like a hot shot. No, you get your ass knocked out. Good.
Yeah,
Down goes
I agree.
Anderson. Down goes Anderson.
Speaking of people who talk a lot of shit and then get knocked down, Casino, let's move to USA women's soccer, where they were eliminated in it was the Sweet 16s, correct? Or before, or was it still the
No, this
32?
was the round of 16. So I know we didn't get to talk about it last week, but so barely the U.S. were lucky even to make the round of 16. Um, their final game against Portugal, it in the 92nd minute, Portugal hit the post, and if they would have put that in, U.S. would have been knocked out, not even making out of group stage. Um, round of 16 loss is still the worst loss in U.S. women's national team history in a World Cup showing. So that's funny, but so I w- so let's break down into this. So you're definitely talking about are you talking about a single player or are you talking about the team in general?
Well, I full disclosure, I don't give a fuck about soccer as we've learned on this podcast, and then I give less of a fuck about like the team or the country sports. I just feel like it's not to get too political, but I just think it's propagandist bullshit where it's like everybody has to unite and root on Team America. It just feels like so like 1950s like bullshit kind of thing. So I don't care when it comes to like world tournaments, like especially like it's cool when basketball does it worldwide. It's cool when soccer does it worldwide, but it's also like I just want to see them play against contemporaries, not be like Japan just started a basketball team. Isn't it cool that Kobe and LeBron are going to drop 50 on them? And it's like, not really. That's not really that cool.
So no,
Like
I okay,
it's
I see your point. I see your point with that. I will say I'm very happy with this year's Women's World Cup. This is the most competitive Women's World Cup, hands down, leaps and bounds. Because I like soccer. I watch U.S. teams. I'm a little bit opposite of you. I like cheering for the U.S. teams.
yeah,
They're not always. I'll be honest. Like even when it comes to um, any sport, sometimes I'm not always cheering for the US player. Like if like tennis is a good example. Most of the US tennis players, they're not my number ones, but I'll still want to cheer for them because I want them to represent USA. So I'm a little different for you on that aspect. But I'll be honest, I'm kind of happy that the US women's national team lost. And this is not because of a political thing. I have my views on that. Um, my whole thing is I thought this team was so poorly managed, so poorly managed by their coach, Blankto. I can never say it. Vlatko Blankto Andervosky, blah 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 blah. But he mismanaged this team so poorly. Like it was absolutely insane. I don't follow the women's national team as much as I would do the men's national team or another sport. it is what it is. But I do know enough to know where he wasn't starting the youth. He wasn't playing players like there's a center back for the team that he did not start at all this entire World Cup. And somebody that you should probably be familiar with, Julie Ertz, so wife of Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
She is naturally a midfield player, and he put her as center back for the women's national team, which is fine. She's a great big presence. She's strong center back position. She could play back there, but US was getting absolutely eaten alive by every team in the midfield. You need to put a better presence in the midfield for a player who naturally plays that. So he did not trust his youth. He had old players in. I did not like his formation, how he had it. I like Alex Morgan. Um, he's a great player, but she's getting close to her retirement. Um, but her playing the point, I don't agree with. They should have put somebody else up there. They should have put some probably Smith up there and moved Alex to the wing, but they didn't. Um, it was really frustrating watching him manage this team, and I thought it was really fitting that yes, Alex Morgan wasn't having a great tournament, um, but in the final game, he puts in Megan Rapinoe and he replaces Alex Morgan going into the PKs because Rapinoe never misses penalty shots, and she missed the vital penalty shot and that's why she got put in at the end of the game. Plus, she had oh, dude, it was just so bad. You put in Rapinoe, she had multiple corner kicks. One didn't even make it. One hit the side netting of the goal. Um, it was just an absolute shit show. I'm really actually happy this team lost because they needed to be humbled. First off, I want this coach to be fired, and that is a massive reason why I was happy with this. Also, the team just they looked lackluster. Um, that was something that I know we were going to talk about it last week, but we didn't. Carly Lloyd, former U.S. captain for the team, played forever, multiple World Cups. She retired in 2022. She's been on the panel for this World Cup, and she pretty much let the U.S. have it. And there was a big uproar about that. And I thought it was funny because I totally agree with Carly Lloyd that the team just didn't seem like they cared. You had the captain Haran came out and was like, "Oh, she's not in the locker room. She doesn't know what she's talking about with what's going on." Alex Morgan even clapped back. Multiple people clapped back at her. But I still stand by what Carly Lloyd said, and of course she has to come out and apologize. But still, I thought it was great, and I'm glad they lost. Uh, I am. I'll be I'm glad they lost because they needed an eye opener and they need to start playing the youth. Both Rapino, um, she's done. She's retiring. And it's funny that her last touch for this team was a missed penalty kick to advance. Julie Ertz is retiring as well, which is sad to see. But yeah, Alex Morgan says she's going to continue playing, but she needs to come in as a supporter role, play the wing. She shouldn't be a top striker. So
All right.
yeah, that
Well,
was the
what
Women's World Cup. It is
women's World Cup? They only do the World Cup every 4 years, right? Or is it every
correct.
two
Yeah,
years?
4.
Years. Okay.
It
So
would be
that's a
nice to see a
long
new
time to
team.
fucking
It
wait.
would be yeah, it'd be nice to see a new team win it though. Um, but I say a new team. The last team to win outside of the US was Japan, and they beat US in the finals, and they look almost unstoppable. But I mean, there's been some really good upsets. Brazil got knocked out by Jamaica, which was awesome. This is Jamaica's first time making the World Cup, and I don't know if they passed the round of 16. I think they may have gotten defeated because I think they had to play Spain. But regardless, that was cool that they got out and they beat former US women's coach, I forget her name, but she was currently the Brazilian coach and knocked out one of the greatest female soccer players to have ever played the game in Marta for Brazil, and that was her last outing as well because she's 38 or 37, whichever the two. So, yeah, it's a very competitive year this year, and I'm I'm actually all for it. And now with US being knocked out, if Japan could get knocked out as well, this would be a really awesome World Cup to watch.
Well, and that's what we talked about before last week's episode, before we recorded it, where we just both had the conversation that kind of what's happening in the World Cup side of basketball is also the same thing that's happening in women's soccer, which is the other countries are kind of starting to catch up to where we are. Obviously, as you just said, it was kind of like a mix of other teams being better. Maybe our best players weren't as good as they had been 4 years ago. Obviously, that happens. But I mean, Team USA for basketball also just got announced, and it's like all you forget all the best players in the NBA, like Jokic, like uh Luka Doncic, like Giannis, like Embiid, all those guys are from other countries. So then when you put Team USA together, LeBron doesn't give a shit about that because it's already been there, done that. He's focused on NBA titles. Same with Steph Curry. So then when you start going down the list of like American born players, like it starts getting a little dicey. Like, and
Right,
that's
and that's why, um, oh my gosh, why am I totally playing his name? Anthony Camelo? Oh
huh?
gosh, what was his name? The US player that played for the basketball team for years. Why am I totally blanking his name?
Carmelo Anthony.
Thank you. I got it. I totally got that
Yeah.
backwards. Carmelo Anthony. Um, I was pretty close with the name, and I just got it backwards.
That was
But,
yeah, you just switched them.
but yeah, Carmelo Anthony, like, that's why he played for the US team for, like, 15 years or whatever it is, because like, was always he's the only one that ever seemed like he gave a shit to
Yeah.
be on the US team.
Well, and then it took the US getting their ass kicked for then to all the big US players to be like, "We gotta go, take back our title." And then they did, but then again, the
Like,
next like the 4 years after that, they're like, "We already did it." So now it's like the young guys, and even this year, it's like the biggest name on the
who
team
who
is
beat
like
him? Wasn't it Spain?
I think it was. I think it might have been they had like one NBA player and then a bunch of guys from like the European League or whatever who are just but I mean, you see guys like, Wembenyama even came out and was like NBA's physical, but it's nothing like playing, overseas, which that might just be like and then obviously
Yeah, I wonder if, like,
Draymond came
the
out.
overseas is kind of like, the old, like, 80s,
Yeah, they're just more
the old
physical.
80s Detroit, the Detroit team and whatnot, and the bad boys and beating the shit out of each other, and nothing's being called.
Yeah. Well, and then Draymond came out and was like, that was summer league. Like, maybe you want to shut the fuck up until you play a regular season game." And it was kind of like, yeah, like that's a good point. Like, he was playing against God knows who. Also, the room I'm recording in is 1,000,000 degrees. So every topic we get to, I will take off a new piece of clothing. Casino. That's the new wrinkle I'm adding to this. You can either join me or you can stay fancy. But
I'm fancy. I told the fans I was gonna be fancy, so this is fucking fancy.
Next up, as I slowly remove my tie, next up, we are talking about Anthony Davis, who signed a 3-year extension supermax contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. It is worth 186 million and will keep him with the team till 2028. My singular question to you on this casino is: does this make the Lakers better?
Oh, I'm very up in the air about this because so here's the thing. You sign him, and even if he is injured, he could be injury prone. Lakers have solidified they have a superstar, somebody that people want to go watch play for, what was the current how many years again?
Three or it's an extension on his year now. So it's technically 4 years, but he was on the last year of a deal, so it's a 3-year
Okay,
extension.
got it. So yeah, so you guarantee that you have 4 more years of, regardless what LeBron does, eyes on the Lakers.
Mhm.
This can also be a draw to be like, "Hey, come play with Anthony Davis." That could be also a draw to get more players in to come over and watch him, and join him. But I still question. So I think that's okay. You know me. I don't really like the big massive contracts that cripples teams. I don't like when they do that. I like when it's more well balanced and people take pay cuts. It's all about the money. Everybody's about greed nowadays, whatever. But with that being said, just the reality of how NBA works and the business of professional leagues, especially football and NBA being the top tier in the US. Um, that is, to me, it is a good move. Um, you want somebody to come play with Anthony. So LeBron leaves, whatever. You want people to come play, and Anthony Davis is a superstar. The question is, the only question I have and concern is, what players want to come play with Anthony Davis? What players would want to come play with a player that is constantly getting injured, whether he's good or not, and whether you're wanting to play for LA or not, you got to take all that into consideration. That if you come and Anthony Davis is hurt, it's LA. All the eyes are on you. They are all on you.
Yep.
You're going to be the new guy for the team if Anthony Davis gets hurt. So again, I think it's a smart move, but also a scary, risky move. Um, because you're taking a big gamble on him being healthy, and where players would want to come and play with him, with his superpower presence. What is your take on that?
So I agree with everything you're saying, but trust me, folks, this isn't going to be like last week, where I agree with everything Casino says. Okay, this isn't the route we're going. But
Hope not.
I'm sure we're going to disagree about. Let's see, we're going to talk about Richard Sherman. I know Casino hates Richard Sherman. I love him. So that's where we're going to completely. Casino's a huge Skip Bayless fan. Obviously, I hate him. So we're obviously going to disagree on that next topic. But as far as the Anthony Davis thing, I agree with you where the obviously he's a big name, Lakers, all that comes with the Lakers, name and cachet. And obviously in all sports, when people ask, what teams do you want to play with? It doesn't matter if it's baseball, basketball, anywhere. It's always New York teams and LA teams get the most publicity because you get the most, or get the most interest because you get the most publicity with it. Right. So you're the biggest name in Los Angeles. That means a hell of a lot more than being the biggest name in Oklahoma. Nothing against Oklahoma. Um,
Oklahoma.
but as far as the Anthony Davis thing goes, is when he's at his peak, there is very few people in the NBA that can compete with him at his peak, right? You have
Right.
Joker, you have Embiid, you have Giannis, and then you have Anthony Davis, who are all in that thing where it's when they're on, and when they're hitting it in all strides. Like, I mean, we even saw it in the playoffs from Anthony Davis, where any night, if he's not dealing with an injury, it doesn't matter who he's against, he's potentially a 30 point, 20 rebound guy every fucking night, right? So his greatness cannot be understated. By when he's on, he's on. The problem is, like you said, he also has an injury history. And as we know, even players like his teammate LeBron James, when you aren't injury prone and then you start getting older, your injury proneness also starts ticking up, right? So LeBron
Right.
James, the most impressive thing in his career was he was never injured. He was always on the court. He was always, you know, resting for a game here, a game there. But for the most point, for the most part, he was on the court. With Anthony Davis, he's already injury prone as a young guy. So you look 4 years into the future, and regardless of what he does, age, waits for no one. And him already being injury prone, it's just going to get progressively worse, or slowly get worse. But still, he's playing 50 games a year now. What does this contract look like in 2 years when he's potentially playing 40 games a year? Right. And it's this Lakers team. And with how the NBA, uh, what is it, like payroll or whatever works now, cap, That's the word I was looking for. How the NBA cap works now, you can only have 2 supermax contracts per team, right? So, using those supermax contracts on LeBron James and Anthony Davis is really going to limit your success, especially in a Western division that is fucking stacked. Like, I mean, if you had to look at the teams right now, the Lakers would probably be the eighth, maybe the at most the fifth best team in the Western Conference. So if this was in the Eastern Conference, it would be like all hands on deck. All we have to compete against is the Sixers, Bucks, and Celtics, and then there's a chance. But in the West, it's like there's 10 solid teams that could make a case for being the best team in the West behind the Nuggets, right? So it's like Nuggets are the clear number one, and we saw this Lakers team that everybody, including myself, was like, they're a great defensive team. They have 2 superstars. We saw them get swept by the Nuggets, not barely lose, like that series against the Golden State Warriors where they like edged it out. It was the Nuggets team who has not lost anybody, who will only get better, is now the king of the West, and the Lakers trying to compete with them are 1 year older on already a old team in terms of superstars, and then they obviously tried to backfill it with a bunch of younger shooters. But yeah, my concern would be short term. This is great because you have Anthony Davis, but short term also is we have Anthony Davis and LeBron James for max 2-3 years. So signing an extension that's 4 years, like this Lakers team needs to win now, or within 3-4 years, they're going to be bottom of the barrel. Like, I mean, that's just the projection of how it's looking, but who knows? They're the Lakers. So, like you said, they might just get rid of Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and then all the big name free agents are like, LA's where I want to go, and then bam, they're the Lakers. So yeah. Let's move on, Casino, to you know what? Let's move on to the topic I just talked about because it'll be a quick one. Shannon Sharp left Fox Sports. I don't know where he's going. I don't think it's been announced yet. I'm assuming he goes
Go
either
home.
I assume he goes to ESPN or one of those random, like maybe CBS Sports or whatever the fuck, like Rich Eisen is on. I don't know.
Just
But
retire. Go home. Nobody wants
but
to hear you.
with
Sorry.
the
I'm not a fan of either one of those guys. And I think it's just because I wasn't a fan of the show. So I
well,
I just liked
yeah,
both of them.
I mean, that's where we're going with this, which is Richard Sherman, the former cornerback for the Seahawks and I believe 49ers, is going to be the Shannon Sharp spot on Undisputed with Skip Bayless. So my question to you is, neither of us watched the show. I was joking earlier because both of us hate Skip Bayless. I think he is pretty much responsible for how shit every sports show is now, where it's just like fake debates because that's what makes ratings, and it's just fucking like abysmal to watch, and I fucking can't stand it. But there's a lot of people who fucking love that shit and eat it up. So will the addition of Richard Sherman, will he make you maybe check out the show more often than you did when it was Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp?
I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Sherman. I don't absolutely despise him like a lot of other people do, but he's not one of my favorites. Um, I don't know. I think I might have a hard time listening to him. I feel like he will naturally be biased for his teams because he's still got a hard on for them all, um, and his former teammates. I don't know. I We'll see how he can handle with the scripted show of, as you were saying, you alluded to the you have to argue for arguing's sake, whether
Well,
they
not only
probably
you have
agree
Yeah,
they
not only you
probably agree
have
on
to
stuff.
argue, you have to argue as if it's the most important thing to you. And like you were saying, like most of the time these guys agree, but it's like, well, the show doesn't work if you both agree. So I need you to argue passionately this thing you don't care about. Like, it's such a weird concept to me. Like, and especially argue with such anger and fervor that you're just like, who the fuck would think this is real? Like, who would think this is real? It's dumb. It's dumb. Ugh.
Right there with you.
Ugh.
I don't know.
I thought
I
we
don't
would
I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy this at all.
I'll probably we'll probably never talk about it on the show again unless one of their clips goes viral for Richard Sherman just calling Skip a curse word or like getting fighting him on the air. I don't know, but it's just one of those things where it's fucking dumb. Next up, I don't really know what we can say about this, but obviously it's big news and worth bringing up, which is the college football realignment has probably been the biggest news story
Yeah,
outside
I
of the
haven't been able to
women's.
keep up.
Yeah, I don't. Well, also, it just becomes a thing where it's so before we get into it, basically the Pac-12 is no longer, and because they have lost now Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, who will join the Big 12, and then it is uh Oregon, Arizona and Arizona State will join the oh, I just had it. No, it is USC, UCLA, and Oregon and Washington will now join the Big 10. And then the other teams I just said will join the Big 12. So that leaves a couple teams that, no offense to these schools, but no one really gives a fuck left in the Pac 12. So this is basically the death of the Pac 12. The rumor mill is
I'm
that the
joining you
left.
on this, by the way.
Yeah. The rumor mill is that the leftover Pac 12 teams will probably join the Mountain West, which we obviously have stake in being from Las Vegas. That's where UNLV is and all that kind of stuff.
Woo!
But as far as these other schools, the rumor on Friday, right after we stopped recording the podcast, was basically the Pac 12 was going to be over if Oregon decided to leave because Oregon has been the class of that conference basically since, USC was good with Leinart and Bush and all that kind of stuff. So all these other teams and conferences were basically waiting for Oregon to decide. And Oregon is obviously the big fish in the relative small pond because they have the Nike guy basically payrolling their entire school, like with Phil Knight and the whole, they get uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Oregon is much more of a brand than probably all these other schools that moved altogether. But thoughts on well, not those teams, but more the realignment of college football and maybe what that looks like in the future, especially because I think the most uh newsworthy part of all this is I think casual fans, myself included, might have underestimated how much college football conferences are tied to TV contracts. So you have basically all the Pac 12 schools being like, we couldn't get any TV money because the Pac 12 was trying to do all this bullshit innovative stuff and trying to go to Apple TV and trying to go to all these streaming services instead of just being like, hey, CBS, pay us a fuckload of money and you can have our games. Like, obviously, SEC is tied to CBS and ESPN is tied to Big 10, now Big 12. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. Thoughts on all that, Casino? Or I guess now it would be Big 14. The what? Well, one of them's the Big 10, one of them's the Big 12, but they added more teams. So both of them are also going to have to change their name. I don't know. How do
They
you think
won't.
this
They
whole
they'll
realignment thing?
keep it the Big 10, Big 12. Like, that's how it's branded. It'd
uh,
be very tough to rebrand your entire channel. Like, some of them actually have the Big 10 network, but some have the Pac-12 network. Like,
Yeah.
having to rearrange that's a big brand. On a lot of like gear, you see Pac-12 jersey, blah 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 blah, or Big Ten jersey, blah 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 blah. I mean, if they don't really care that you know there's going to be the old jerseys out there and they're going to rebrand, but that's a lot of money. So why just keep it what it is? I mean, it's just the
Yeah.
name. It shouldn't be going off of what the actual how many teams are in there, personally. I think it's dumb. But you're right. I think if Oregon leaves, that is 100% the death of that conference. It is gone. It is done. Nothing important anymore from that.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
I
they
don't know.
did leave along with the only probably other big name in that conference, which was USC. So if USC stayed, maybe they could be like, all right, Oregon's out, but we're going to try to get all the California
Right.
teams,
That's
all the
that's what I
Arizona
meant.
teams. Yeah. And just like try to cobble together something. But now basically, and the weirdest thing is all this shit like takes time to happen. So I believe I read some of them where it's like one of these takes effect in a year, one of them takes effect in 2 years. So it's also just going to be weird that you have this dying conference that still has like a playoff bid, and then the playoffs obviously getting, you know, beefed up to include more teams. So it's just going to be, especially this year, is just going to be a weird college football season, especially with what it was Texas and Oklahoma also joined the SEC. So it's like they literally need to,
Oklahoma.
yeah, they literally need to, all the college conferences just need to get together and be like, we'll be the West Coast Conference, you be the North, you be the East, you be the West, and then just split it, how the NFL kind of does, where it's NFC, AFC. You need to have Big Ten West, Big Ten or Big Ten East, and just kind of, it's going to be messy, but it's already fucking messy. It's always kind of been messy
True.
because all these conferences kind of rule themselves, and then the NCAA really doesn't have anything to do with it. And then you have this other thing like the BCS over here, and then you have the new playoff thing over here. It's just college football is fucking messy. And then you get into the bullshit where it's like all these multi-billion-dollar schools don't play their players, but now the players are getting NIL deals, and it's just college football. It's in 5 years, it's going to look much different than it has in the past 20 years. Like it's going through transformation here. But now that all that is out of the way, Casino, do you have anything you would like to talk about before we get into the NFC South?
I think I'm good.
All right. We took a little break there, but we are back and we are going to do our first NFL division preview. We are starting with, after looking through all the divisions, Casino, do you think this one is the least interesting or one of the most interesting because there's
Oh,
no clear-cut favorite?
oh, you know what? It's probably going to be the most boring in a sense of who can win a title, playoffs, all that jazz. But it is going to be interesting to watch. Um, you've got some quarterbacks that are every team has a different quarterback, right? I mean, I would think so. No, a little
I
bit.
believe so. Yeah.
Well,
Or
no,
no,
Derek
except for the
Carr did a little bit.
Falcons.
Well, Derek Carr played a little bit, or
Well,
not
you're
Derek
saying
Carr.
new to
Baker.
the
I mean,
team?
Baker Mayfield.
No, he
Baker.
signed with the Bucks in the offseason because last season it was Tom Brady.
Oh, he's been bouncing around like crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so this is gonna be fun to watch because yeah, so Baker Mayfield with the Bucks, you know, we don't dislike the guy. They're still a decent team. I'm wondering how that's gonna play on out. Do you think he will be better or worse going into that division?
Well, let's start with the Tampa Bay Bucks, Casino. They finished the season last season. Let me get my notes here. They finished the season last year 8-9. Then they got destroyed in the playoffs. If I remember correctly, it was by the Dallas Cowboys. Tom Brady's last game in the NFL. He retired in the offseason. This year, they have the 17th easiest schedule in the league. I ranked them by easiest. So they have the 17th easiest schedule in the league. The projected win total right now that you can bet on pretty much everywhere for them is 6.5 wins. If you had to put money on it, would you make that over or under?
Um, Over.
Okay. I think I would go under just because I don't, like you said, there is a hot quarterback controversy going on right now in Tampa Bay, where obviously you lose Tom Brady. You can't bring in anybody to replace Tom Brady at that level, but they brought in Baker Mayfield, who is having a training camp quarterback battle with Kyle Trask. So if Baker Mayfield loses out to Kyle Trask, I think that's probably the end for Baker Mayfield. And then is he really, he kind of always felt like Cam Newton-ish to me, where it's like I don't feel like he would be a good backup quarterback, right? Like he kind of needs the starting quarterback, that swagger, that kind of mode, or else he's going to be an issue, I feel like.
Okay.
Disagree or
Um, no, I kind of agree with that. Uh, so I think that Baker's gonna come out on top over Trask. I mean, he's the name. People want to see Baker Mayfield play. They don't want to see Kyle Trask play. You know, and if it's gonna be even close, they're gonna go with Baker Mayfield.
yeah, I kind of agree. It also feels like the head coach obviously for the Buccaneers is Todd Bowles. He kind of seems like the only reason I would have doubt that Baker Mayfield would start is he kind of seems like a no nonsense, like I don't give a fuck guy. So if it's Baker Mayfield is doing the cocky Oklahoma, early Brown shit that kind of got him on a lot of people's shit list, like I could see Todd Bowles being like, I'd rather have the boring guy who doesn't annoy me than the slightly better, maybe more annoying Baker Mayfield. Again, I feel like me and you both kind of like Baker. And when he was with Cleveland, I thought he was way better than people made him out to be. Like, I
I do
mean,
too.
but the only new coach on the Tampa Bay Bucks staff is Dave Canales, who is the new offensive coordinator. Last season, he was the quarterback coach for the Seahawks. Also, I believe, and I think I wrote it down here, besides the new head coach or besides the new coaching staff for the Panthers, this is the only coaching change in this division is the Tampa Bay's offensive coordinator. The old one was Byron Leftwich, which, helped Tom Brady win a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. But as far as their stats last season in offense, they were 15th in yards, 32nd in rushing yards, so they were dead last. Second in passing yards, obviously with Tom Brady, and 25th in points. Their defense, however, was ninth in yards, 15th in rush, ninth in pass, and 13th in points allowed. So basically it comes down to this year, can they maintain their defense, and can they, obviously they're going to fall back passing yards just because you go from Tom Brady to either Trask or Mayfield, and then rushing yards, they've kind of done nothing to address that. So my question to you, Casino, is what does this Bucks team need to do to not only win this division, but to be a team they were last year?
Um,
All right, there you are.
my, yeah, dude. Well,
So
I
here,
guess
wait,
it's
I'm
not the
gonna
computer.
cut that out because you cut out.
Yeah, because this is a brand new computer. It should be
Let me
good.
just throw you that. I mean, it has been much better. But let me throw you that question again and then just answer it like I'm throwing it to you for the first time. Uh so my question to you, Casino, is what do you think this Bucks team needs to do? Obviously, they don't have Tom Brady, new offensive coordinator, different quarterbacks. What do they need to do to be better than last year or better than their projected 6-7 wins this season?
They're gonna have to rely heavily on Mike Evans and Godwin as well. I mean, those are two top tier players when they're healthy, and they're coming into this year. They should be fully healthy. I haven't heard anything about them not being. The only thing that's scary is they don't have a running game. They were the worst. I believe they were the worst rushing team last
Yes.
year. Yeah, at only 76.9 rushing yards per game. And, you're not gonna get a lot of rushing there from Baker Mayfield. So y or, if they end up going with, Kyle Trask. But you're gonna have to rely heavily on those 2 guys. Like, they're gonna have to find ways to get open. If you remember right, with Tom Brady, they were having a bit of a disconnect. Brady was having trouble finding them. They weren't getting open. Um I don't know if that was an injury thing or if it was just Brady wasn't caring and he had so much stuff going on in his personal life. Um, but these 2 receivers will have to step up heavily, not only if they go with a rookie quarterback from, the second round draft pick back in 21 with Kyle Trask, or going with Mr. Showboaty, I like doing commercials, Baker Mayfield, and all eyes are gonna be on him. And they're all doing this with a new offensive coordinator. The good thing that they have going for them, though, is the offensive coordinator, coming over from Seattle. Look what he did with that team. Look what he did with, Geno Smith. So
That's true.
I'm fingers crossed that they're going to be doing okay. So they got to find some sort of run game to help out the offensive game. Luckily, they do have Mike Evans and Chris Cotton. They have 2 really good receivers, top tier Pro Bowl type receivers, because then the defense can't just cover one and then call it a day. They're gonna have to watch out for both. Um, and again, you and I, we both like Baker. I don't know too much about Trask and where his accuracy is, but we'll see. Um, I'm a little worried for that team if they can't get those 2 targets open, and if the coach can't um, devise up a scheme to get the ball in those 2 guys players' hands. If they don't do that, it's going to be a struggle for them this year. But as you were saying, I do think Baker Mayfield will be tamed down a little bit by the head coach. So that's
Well,
seems promising for that.
Well, that also is a great point about like look at what the new OC did with uh Geno Smith, which is a quarterback I'm sure we talked about last year where it was just like, oh man, the Seahawks are going to start the season with Geno Smith and then he has a Pro Bowl season and even in the NFC is one of the top 3 best quarterbacks in that entire conference, but the issue I have is one of the things about Seattle last year, and this had a lot to do with injury, but also a lot to do with scheme and play calling, was they were also one of the worst rushing teams in the league. So you take a guy who, yeah, he was great with Geno Smith and the passing attack, but he arguably goes to a team with probably a worse quarterback. I mean, we've seen Baker Mayfield have good seasons, but he's never had like a breakout standout season. So if that's this season, great. If it's not, you're going to get a less efficient passing game, kind of weapons that are maybe a notch below Seattle because you obviously in Seattle had Metcalf and that explosive passing offense, but they also had a better offensive line. The Buccaneers are kind of transitioning to a different offensive scheme and setup with a offensive line that's being rebuilt. And then you're bringing over an offensive coordinator who's rushing attack was almost as bad as the Buccaneers last year. So you're bringing in a bad rushing offensive coordinator. Even though he was only the quarterback's coach last year, he still studied under that system, right? So I don't think he's gonna all of a sudden go to the Bucks and be like, "We were the worst rushing team in the Seahawks, but I knew how we could have been number one." And all of a sudden, Tampa Bay's the number one rushing offense, especially when they don't have a big name or even a no name at running back after getting rid of Fournette a couple years ago. So, yeah, I don't know, Casito. This team, do you think this team is in contention closer to be a number one draft pick or closer to winning this division again?
Oof. That's a weird thing because like the two different directions. Like, I don't have them winning this division. At best, I would have Tampa being third. I do like two teams above them heavily, um, but I don't think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Um, they're going to be bad, maybe bottom five, but I don't think they're going to be fighting for that number one draft spot.
Yeah, I agree. So right now their uh running backs are Rashad White. I think that's how you say his name. Rashad
Hmm?
White. Rashad White, last year, he played all 17 games. He had 129 attempts and 481 yards rushing. They also
Uh,
brought in Chase Edmonds. And then, like you said,
who?
they, yeah, they have Baker Mayfield or Trask. They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Russell Gage at wide receiver. So that's a pretty good wide receiving core. I think we
Yeah,
would
they're going to
agree
have to
that's a
fall
top
heavily
10.
though on that.
Yeah. Their offensive line is being rebuilt, but it's still a solid unit. And then their tight end is K. Dotton and Kokeef, which are two names I know nothing about. So I can't make a statement on their tight ends team. Now on their defensive side of the ball, they were in most categories last year top they were top 10 in both yards and passing and then 15th and 13th in rushing points. They however also were able to re-sign their cornerback Jamal Dean, re-sign Levante David, and then they added Gaines, Anthony Nelson, Ryan Neal, and then also added, as we just said, Chase Edmonds and offensive lineman Matt Feeler. They lost, however, Julio Jones, which I totally forgot he played for the Bucks last year. And then they also lost a cornerback in Sean Murphy Bunting, a defensive tackle in Akeem Hicks, a safety, and an edge rusher in Mike Edwards and Carl Nassib. So for losing not that much, they kind of reloaded and then they drafted a defensive tackle and then an offensive tackle in the first two rounds of the draft. So again, but this is the NFL and it all comes down to quarterback. So if you have a top five quarterback, you're probably going to be in the playoffs. If you have a top five bad quarterback, you're probably going to be out of the playoffs. And this team looks to be a top 10 defense, but if they're the 32nd ranked offense, it kind of feels like exactly what it's being projected to be, a 7-win team at best case scenario. Like, uh, this was just a yes or no question, and we'll move on to the next team because, unless you have anything else to say about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, do you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers repeating as division champs of the NFC South?
No.
I do not either. Anything else to say on the Bucks, or can we move on?
No, we can move on. The next team that I would like to talk about, if you're cool with, is the Panthers.
Yes.
I'm kind of excited to talk about them. So obviously they get the big guy. Well, not really the big guy. They get the little guy, but they hit the number one guy coming out. They do get Bryce Young. Um, and
I see what.
so yeah, big little guy getting coming on out. The 2021 Heisman Trophy winner, but I like Bryce Young. I think he's gonna have a good year. Yes, he is short. Yes, um he's got that, oh my gosh, why am I totally blanking? That Kyler Murray, fast, short, but at least Bryce Young, I feel like he can sling the ball real well. And the Panthers, we were very surprised with what they did in the offseason. They, I think, had one of the best off seasons this year. They loaded up, bringing in over Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, and then they got the tight end Hayden Hurst. That's a solid receiving group right there. And then, they get the Pro Bowl running back with Miles Sanders. Um, I like this. And in my opinion, I think they got one of the better receivers in the 2023 draft with Jonathan Mingo. I like what they did. And this is just their offense. I'll get to their defense in a second on what they did there. So they're they're doing really well because they didn't just get the number one guy coming out of college, and being like and doing the whole Trevor Lawrence thing. Like, hopefully, he can bring our team to the promised land, and we're gonna put it all on his back, like they were doing with Trevor Lawrence. Again, you and I are very high on him, and what he's done single-handedly. So we'll get to Trevor Lawrence on another day. I really like what this Panthers offseason looked like with signing those guys, um, and not only signing, giving him plenty of weapons and options, with the running backs, with the tight end, like not just receivers, like what we were talking about with Chris Evans and Chris Evans. Dang it. Uh, oh my God, why is it just like literally went in one Evans and Godwin? There we go. I'll just say that. Oh my gosh, I'm having like a stroke moment in my head.
It's probably because you're sweating so much. I know that's what's happening over here.
I'm cutting off the circulation with my neck. Okay.
um,
Anyway,
yeah.
but I mean, and then they did some strong signings on the defensive side as well with the safety Von Bell, bringing him in. That's really good. And then bringing in Brian Burns, who I'm seeing the stat here. I didn't know this. I knew he was good, but I didn't know that he was this good. In the last 3 seasons, across the last three seasons, he's had 30 and a half sacks, um,
Jesus.
which is ninth most in NFL, only a half a sack behind Aaron Donald, who is at the eight most, which that shocked me a little bit. I thought Aaron Donald had way more sacks than that over the last 3 years. I know outside of the Super Bowl year, whatnot, and going on, Aaron Donald's been kind of, that team's not been that great, but only 31 over the last 3 seasons kind of shocks me, to be honest. But anyway, I mean, they've got a decent defense as well. I mean, it's not maybe the best defense in the league, but it's definitely going to be a defense where you're going to have to look out for some guys. Um, I like this Panthers team. I think they're going to be pretty damn good this year. Um, I don't I I don't know if they're gonna be able to win the division. I'm still thinking the Saints, bar things going correctly for them, will move on to them next. Um, so that is my hot take on them. I think they're gonna do very well. I think Bryce Young will shine with this team. My dog is barking. So what you say?
So I do want to talk about, I know you mentioned all the free agent signings. I think DJ Chalk and Adam Thielen, and then Miles Sanders, Bryce Young, Hayden Hurst, that's a completely new offense, right? So their
Right.
offense almost at every position on offense. And then they even made changes to their offensive line. They got a backup quarterback as well in Andy Dalton, too, which I think is a good signing, especially to
Well,
help
also new head. I mean, you said the coaches thing. They did get the new head coach with Frank.
Frank Reich,
Yeah,
which I think Frank Reich might be one of those guys who is a better coordinator than he is a head coach
I can
in
get. I'll back that.
in the seasons he spent with the Colts, his record is 41 wins, 40 losses, one tie. So he's basically average across the board, which, hey, in the NFC South with this division, that might one win go 8-9 or 9-8. That's going to get you probably to
Just like
win
we
this
saw
division.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's smart of him. I mean, he got fired, but it was still smart of him to kind of jump that Colts ship that was sinking in a division that's probably going to be ruled by the Jaguars for many years to come. But so the Carolina Panthers, they went 7-10 last year. They now this year have the fourth easiest schedule in the league. Their projected win total is 7.5. So you going over or under on that number?
7.5.
Yes.
No, over, because I think the Panthers can win this division.
I do as well. I think they are hovering around 8 or 9 wins, or I think they're hovering around 7 wins with maybe like 2 weeks to go in the season. And then it really comes down to do they finish, 8-9, 9-8, what that kind of looks like. But last year, which I found interesting, was in defense, they were 18th in rush yards, 22nd in pass yards, 19th in points per game. And they were also a top 8 team in the entire league in blitz, which or in blitz percentage of plays, which I thought was interesting until I realized they switched their defensive coordinator to, however, they hired the Broncos defensive coordinator from last year, and the Broncos defense was lights out, right? They were,
One of the only things good about that team, if not the only thing.
yeah. So to go from a defense that was ranked probably in the bottom third of the league with 18th and between 18th and 22nd in every defensive category, I think that's a huge upgrade. Obviously, you talked about getting Von Bell from Cincinnati, where last year he had 4 interceptions and only 3 forced incompletions, but he was also coming off injuries and stuff like that. So I really think this team this year is going to live or die. Their quarterbacks are kind of thin. Their secondary is going to get torched if they don't get pressure with their front seven. So it really comes down to, what does this defense look like comparative to the Broncos defense of last year? Will he be able to, and him being a Giro Evero, which is a fucking badass name, but will
Yeah, it is.
will Evero be able to bring some of that Broncos scheme over to this Carolina Panthers team? And then this Carolina Panthers team's basically going to have to live or die by what this new offense looks like. And again, it can't be understated that DJ Chalk and Adam Thielen are both injury prone. Miles Sanders was the running back in the offseason that got the biggest contract, but was he a product of that great Eagles offensive line, or is he propped up by that, or is he just as good as he was in Philadelphia and the offensive line didn't matter? Where that's going to be a huge question mark, because I love Miles Sanders. I wish the Eagles would have kept him, but I'm also not like devastated that we lost him, if that makes sense. He doesn't
Yeah.
jump off the screen to me as a game-changing running back like a Henry or Saquon Barkley and stuff like that. So yeah.
Jamal
Uh,
Adams.
Will, my last question to you, Casino, on the Carolina Panthers is, do you see them winning this division?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I think they have the potential to be a wild card team, especially in, like we talked about last week, an NFC where it's like try to find the playoff teams, and you're kind of just being like, out of the top four,
So
like I don't know
you
who
don't
else
think that
sneaks
they can
in.
win this division?
I think they can win this division. I don't think they will. I
Oh,
think,
oh,
y-
love to
yeah.
hear who you think.
My team that I'm picking is the one we're going to talk about next, which is the New Orleans Saints.
I don't agree.
So the New Orleans Saints have the number one easiest schedule coming into this season, and I go off the sharp football focus projected win totals, which is or about strength of schedule, which is they factor in what teams are supposed to look like next season, as opposed to most other websites where they base it on how well teams were last year, which I think is a dumb uh like thing to do because most teams look so different year to year. But based on the sharp football focus, they have the number one easiest schedule this year. Their projected win total is 9.5. So do you think they win less or more than that, Casino?
The Saints?
The Saints. They're a
Less.
almost
I
nine
say
win
less.
team. See, I think they win 10 games, and I think 10 games
How?
wins you this
How?
division.
How?
This is what I'm going to tell you. So, last year, their offense was 19th in yards, 19th in rush, 16th in pass, 22nd in points. Their defense, however, was fifth in yards allowed, second, or no, I'm sorry, 24th in rush yards allowed, second in pass yards allowed, and ninth in points. So they had a top 10 defense where they kind of got burned on the run, but could shut down the pass and didn't let other teams score. Their obvious offseason additions were the biggest one is Derek Carr going from the Raiders to the Saints. And then, oh, my thing is buffering. It's buffering. There we go. Their other additions were they re-signed Michael Thomas. They bought in Foster Moreau, tight end. They signed Jamal Williams from the Lions. They also signed Jarvis Landry, a couple defensive tackles, and the ones they lost were Andy Dalton, an edge rusher, and two defensive tackles and a linebacker. So, uh, yeah, I just think this is a team that is built on defense first. Obviously, their first two draft picks in the first two rounds. They got Brian Brees from Clemson, Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame, the edge rusher. So I just think this is a team that I don't think it's any debate that they upgraded at quarterback from who Andy Dalton is now, which is a backup to a rookie, right? They got Derek Carr, who we've seen, like him or not, when he was with the Raiders, he had some pretty damn good games. And they have a top 10 defense. So Derek Carr, you're saying, can't win three more games than they did last year to make it go from 7-10 to 10-7 with this defense that didn't really lose anybody and kind of just reloaded. Same coaching staff, like easiest schedule in the league. I just think this is tailor made for this Saints team to, yeah, edge out the Carolina Panthers. I think the Carolina Panthers finished with 8 wins and the Saints finished with 10. So tell me where I'm wrong, Casino.
I think where you're wrong. Sorry, I was pulling something else up while you were chatting because I wasn't wanting to listen to that bullshit. Um,
This is
dude.
outrageous. Outrageous.
So I understand that, but I don't like the inconsistencies that this team keeps having. Yes, you got a solid quarterback now, but now you're out your running back for the first few games. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Also, Michael Thomas, he's towards the end of his career. He's always banged up. Can you rely on him? Do you think there is going to be a decrease in his performance? I do. I just don't like it. Um, uh, man, dude, I just have trouble seeing this team. I just have trouble seeing this team gelling. I guess that's really my biggest thing is I just don't know if this team can put it all together and do enough to win. I mean, maybe that's just a feeling thing. I don't know. I mean, you did give good points, but I still think all those points are wrong.
I just think that Yeah, their
I mean, they
offense
got a
is going to
lot of
be
young they got a lot of young players coming in, dude. Uh, I don't know, man.
yeah, but I just think when it comes to the Saints, it's going to be a bunch of veterans who have been in this league, have put up good numbers from Derek Carr to Michael Thomas to Lattimore on the defense, like guys who at one time were either superstars or right on the edge. And Derek Carr's coming off his rough year, but with all the fucking shit that was going on in Oakland, like I kind of put that more on the situation than the player. We've seen Derek Carr be at times elite. I don't think all of a sudden in one season he just goes to dumpster fire. So I think if, again, they were 16th in pass yards, if they can go to 12th in pass yards, maybe their running attack bring it up from 19th to 15th. I just think you don't fall that far back from what you were defensive last year. You up your offense to even just a couple clicks better, and I really think that's the only difference in this league
All right,
from winning 3 games to losing 3 games.
so
Like,
so I can't remember. Is Kamara 3 games or 4 games?
I think we talked about it last week.
We did.
I believe he was 3 games, was he
Okay.
not?
Well, first game, September 10th, you're versus Tennessee. You're playing that at home at the Superdome. Um, that's gonna be a tough one. Going against up Mike Vrabel. I don't care. I know Tennessee's kind of a shit show, but going against that coach, that will be an interesting one to go. But then after that, you have Carolina, you have at Green Bay. Like the Carolina game, that right there, the Carolina game could be the most important game of their season, and it's that early.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I'll be honest, I'm going to take Carolina on September 18th over the Saints. Because you're not gonna the Saints won't have a running game. All they're gonna have really, I mean, yes, you have Jamal Williams, but I don't know, man. I like the defense better with the Carolina, with Saints going to be losing a couple people. Again, this is a ways away. There's still plenty of things that can happen until then. Um, but I mean, yeah, I'm looking at it. That's an easy schedule. They have an easy schedule. The Saints do, but I could see them losing to Carolina. I could see them losing to Tennessee. Um, I can honestly see them losing to Green Bay. Um, Tampa, they'll beat New England at New England. I don't think they'll beat the Patriots defense because the Patriots just signed Trey Flowers, brought him back into the fold. He's one of the best pass rushers. I think he's going to get to Drew Brees, or not to Drew Brees. Um, yeah, get to
Derek
Derek
Carr.
Carr. Houston, they'll roll over. They have Jacksonville. I'm going to take Jacksonville on that. If Indy's able to keep Taylor, I'm probably going to take Indy on that one.
But
Chicago,
see,
though,
this
I
is
don't know, dude. Like, there's a
you're
lot of games
projecting
that
too far. But
no,
see,
well,
this
I'm
is
just looking. I'm not projecting too far. I'm looking what they have, and you're saying it's the easiest schedule. I feel like a lot of these teams that they're going to be going up against that I'm looking at, it's almost a coin flip, to be
yeah, but that's
honest.
what I'm
For me,
saying. It's a coin flip for the
but it
first month of the season. It's not like they're going to be heavy underdogs against the Titans, Panthers, Packers, and Buccaneers. Those first 4 games, the first month, they're going to be in toss up. They're going to be 1.5 point favorites, 1.5 point underdogs in every single one of those games. You're acting like they're playing Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, Bengals first 4 weeks. They're playing 4 teams that, much like this Saints team, are all in flux. Like, we don't know what any of these teams are going to be. You trust right now Jordan Love more than Derek Carr? Like, you trust Will Levis more than Derek Carr? You trust what is it? Oh, there's my pit stain right there to show you how hot this room is. You trust Bryce Young on his second start more than Derek Carr? Like, all these Kyle Trask, it's going to be like they're going to be playing bad quarterbacks or quarterbacks we know nothing about with a potential top 5 defense.
Again, I don't
Like,
think Kyle Trask is gonna be playing. I think Baker Mayfield will be playing. And yes, I do think Bryce Young with Carolina, with what he has for the full team, is gonna be a stronger team than the Saints. That's just how I pin it out. But you said that this is the easiest schedule in the NFL this year. If it's the easiest schedule in the NFL this year and you're flipping a coin on this bitch on almost every single game, I don't see how
yeah.
you can win 10 games. I
Well,
just don't. I
because
just don't.
the only playoff teams they play from last year outside of obviously their conference, because they're playing that team regardless. The only playoff teams they play from last year are the Giants, the Vikings, and Jaguars.
But here's
Like,
the thing,
that's it.
you just alluded to it. You just talked about it, that what you're looking again at last year, these teams have changed drastically.
Yeah,
There's a
but
lot of teams that
I don't think they're playing again the powerhouses of this league. And if they're in all these games that are toss ups or coin flips, like some of those coin flips are going to be in their favor. Like it's
okay.
just becomes one of those things where,
So if that's the case, then you're looking at 8 and 9 or 9 and 8
yeah.
if you
And
go with the
one,
go
all
with
they
the
need
odds.
is, and all they need is one of those games to turn in their favor more than it turns against them, which I think is completely probable. Again,
Okay, that's completely probable, but it's also completely probable that it's gonna go the opposite direction.
well,
So
that's why we play
here's
the
another
game.
I understand. So here's another concern though for me is a lot of teams do this. A lot of teams in sports do this. They play down to the level of competition that they're playing. So this Saints team, if they're going to be playing a shit ton of games against easier teams, cupcake teams, teams that are still trying to figure themselves out, I mean, they might be playing down too much. They don't have those big games to be like, okay, here's what a real competitor's like. This is what we have to play to. This is the level we have to play to. Going just say like Jacksonville, for instance, or Chicago, for instance. I mean, hell, even New England being in that tough ass division, they're going to be playing tough teams. They're going to understand how to play against teams that are trying to get to the Super Bowl. When the Saints, they're not going to be playing a Super Bowl contending team this entire season.
But we see it every year. We see last year the Eagles had the easiest schedule and they went straight to the Super Bowl, especially in the NFC. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that's going to happen with the Saints, but
No, because
I
the,
do
the
think
Eagles actually had
when there
an
is
amazing
teams,
team.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Saints team is great, dare I say, one of the best defensive teams. And if they can be an average offensive team, I don't see how you can argue that a 7-10 team last year with basically the same makeup, only on the offensive side of the ball, they're a better team. Yeah, they don't have Kamara for the first 3-4 games, and that's going to hurt. But also, they've, I would say, a significant upgrade from current day Andy Dalton to Derek Carr. Like, I think that's a significant upgrade
Oh,
on offense.
it is a significant upgrade.
So
It is a
then
significant upgrade.
I don't see with an easier schedule a potentially as good or better defense than last year and a, I would say by all accounts, better offense than last year. I don't see how they don't go and just flip the script from 7-10 to 10-7. Like, I
Again,
can't find,
Carolina picked up 4 pieces on offense, 4 pieces on defense, and yes, it is a rookie quarterback, but it's a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback that didn't go Heisman and left, stayed, he continued playing in college, he's got more experience in that, um, and if your worry is, yes, there's a lot of, number 1 quarterbacks that come out and bust, like, of the last, like, 30, round 1 draft picks of the last decade or whatever for quarterbacks, 5 or 6 have panned out. I was listening to Colin today, and that's what he was saying. Um, you were listening to the same thing. So it is a long shot that, Bryce Young would be one of those guys. But again, a lot of those quarterbacks were put on shitty teams with nothing to show for it, and they've had to
Yeah.
work through that, and now they've gotten better. But I feel like this Carolina team, they did so much work in the off season that they've put together a really good team that now they're missing is a decent quarterback. And if Bryce Young comes in and he just plays halfway decent, I think they're going to be pretty damn successful. And I'm
Yeah.
not taking anything from Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr. I do, but just to say that the Saints, just because they didn't lose much from last year, players fall off. I do like the restructure of the Carolina, and I think that the restructure of this team with players coming in from other teams that, you know, weren't weren't always top tier, or they've reached their ceiling already. You're coming down onto a fresh team that, where's the ceiling? The ceiling can only be up because they haven't been good for so many years. That reinvigorates guys. The Saints, they've been pretty much the same level every single year, and I don't think that just bringing in quarterback, I like Carr. I don't know why. I do know why, because there was Carr left Vegas because him and McDaniels didn't get along. But I I think that it's going to be Carolina on top of the Saints. You saying vice versa.
Yes.
This will be a good rivalry to have throughout the season for the shittiest division in football, probably.
I do
So,
think
I like how we're
both.
getting this hyped up about the shittiest division in football.
Yeah. I do think, especially in the NFC, I do think both these teams end up making the playoffs,
That
in
would be
the
awesome.
regard
I
of
would
which
I
they
would
do.
really enjoy that. Really enjoy
Yeah.
that.
But we're running a little long here, so let's
Yeah,
get
we
to our
are.
last team in this division. We will see who succeeds in our Panthers or Saints vote by the end of the season. But let's move on to maybe the most, to me, interesting team in this division, because they can either be really fun to watch or just garbage. And I, of course, am talking about the Atlanta Falcons, who also finished last season 7-10. They have the projected second easiest schedule in the league. And when I saw this projected win total, I don't know if I will put money on it, but this is the first one where I was like, really? The projected win total right now for the Atlanta Falcons across the board is 8.5 wins. What do you think about that, Casino? Over or
Dude,
under?
way under.
I think so as well. I don't know what everyone's
I
seeing.
know I know last
So,
year we were really high on this team, but I just can't get it. I can't get behind it, especially running with the new quarterback here.
or not the new quarterback, they're bringing back Desmond Ritter from last year. So,
Well,
let's
Ritter didn't
talk.
play the entire season last year, right?
Yeah, I think he only started the last like month or two. But again,
Right,
we watched
exactly.
those
So that's
games.
what I'm
He didn't
saying.
look
Like,
good
to
at
me, that's
all.
still fresh and new.
So last year, their offense, yards per game, they were 24th. Rush yards, they were third in the league, which made it all that surprising as why they picked Bijan Robinson of all the choices at the early pick they had. Pass yards, they were 31st, and points, they were 15th. Their defense was not good at all. 27th in yards
Yeah.
per game,
I don't know why
23rd in rush,
they
pass
did go
yards
for
in
one of the safeties
25th,
in the draft.
and then 23rd in points allowed. I did, however, if you look at their offseason additions, it is basically Bijan Robinson, and then all defense. They got Jesse Bates, which was the PFF's top ranked free agent safety. He comes from, I believe, the Bills. So they had Jesse Bates. They got Ana Yamada, I think is his name, on the defensive front. Linebackers, Lorenzo Carter, Caden Ellis. They got edge rusher Bud Dupree. They signed Mac Hollins. They also signed Tyler Heineke, which I don't know how there isn't a quarterback competition. It appears coming out of Atlanta, it's going to be Ritter, but from what we saw from Heineke last year, I don't think it's a significant downgrade or upgrade to have Ritter. I would probably put Heineke in there over what we saw from him last year compared to what we saw from Ritter last year. Then they also added Calaris Campbell and Eddie Goldman on the defensive line, and then cornerback Mike Hughes. The only person they lost was Zacharias at wide receiver and Rashawn Evans, the linebacker. So almost a completely rebuilt defense, which is good because their defense last year was brutal. But this offense is just a giant, giant question mark to me, because even if they go from the third ranked rushing attack to 1 or 2, I don't see how that could possibly elevate them from a 7-10 team to especially a projected win total of 8.5. I don't know what this team has done in the offseason besides add a bunch of defensive players, but they didn't change any of the coaches. So you still have a defensive coordinator who allowed you to have basically a bottom tier defense last year. So adding better players, yeah, it's going to bump it up, but I don't see a significant improvement for this team this year, especially to be a 2 wins better team. Yes, they have the second easiest schedule, and obviously that was the point of my Saints argument, but my Saints argument was also this is a great defense that made improvements on their bad offense. This is going to be a Falcons team that's going to have a better defense, but I don't see any significant improvements they've made on the offensive side of the ball, and I just don't like Ritter at all. From what we saw from him last year, week after week that he played, he just looked abysmal. I mean,
Right.
thoughts on the Falcons this year, Casino? Because this is the one where when I looked at all the over-unders, I was most shocked by this team being projected to be a 9-win team.
Yeah, man. There's no way, because we're high on those other two teams that I can't see this team. I can't see this team with Ritter doing anything really. Um,
No, I
it,
think
that is my
I think
child. Sorry.
Falcons and Bucks, they're going to be in more contention to be at the bottom of this division than at the top. Like I just
Right.
think I wouldn't be. I really thought this over under for this Falcons team would be 5.5. For it to be 8.5 is legit shocking to me. So final thoughts on this Falcons team, Casino, because I think they're going to be interesting to watch, but I don't think that the quarterback play is going to be at the level it is in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm down
Two
on that
thumbs,
team.
two
Yeah.
thumbs down. Uh,
But we should probably get this wrapped up. This did run long. My kid's starting to get up actually. So
Also, last year, and I agree, before we get out of here, Ritter only threw for 708 yards and 2 touchdowns. I believe he only played in and that's from 4 games. So in 4 games, he had 2 touchdowns, 700 yards. Small sample size. His completion percentage was 63%. So maybe there's something there, but like I said, when we watched him last year, we even talked about it when we were talking about Atlanta Falcons games. He didn't jump off the screen as like, that guy's got to be the starter. Like he really feels like just a transition quarterback. And yeah, I don't know. They're going to be this division for like you said, they might be the worst division in football, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be interesting. Like there's some interesting teams, maybe all of them in this division that I look forward to watching. But that has been the NFC South. On Friday's show, we will talk about the AFC South. And then as the weeks progress, we will do the same thing with other NFC and AFC divisions. So, Casino, anything to say to the people on our season 2, episode 1 ending right here?
um, I like my toaster oven better than my toaster.
There you go. Your computer has been outstanding this time. It was great that we dressed up for this. We will be back on Friday for season 2, episode 2. I'm going to do the Marvel Comics thing where I keep the legacy number of what episode we're actually on at the bottom corner of our pictures on YouTube. So look for that. But yeah, this has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will, that's Casino, and we will see you Friday. Adios.